You're listening to Popcorn in Orbit, a podcast for sci-fi lovers of all galaxies, hosted by filmmakers Jeremy Major and Ian P. Causer.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Ian, how you doing?
I'm very well. Really excited today, Jay.
I am too, yeah. We have a very special guest with us. This guy is a legend in the VFX world, which is visual effects, in case anyone's wondering. I feel like he's done almost everything, like pretty much every movie in existence.
I would think so, yeah. And he's done them really, really well.
Today we're going to sit down with Bob Munroe, who is, as I say, this visual effects legend. This guy has pioneered technologies. He was there sort of from the beginning of like the big visual effects movement in the 90s. And a lot of people, I think, would know his work from The Expanse, for example, which is a hugely popular show. He's a producer. He's a director. He's kind of done everything. He's got a ton of connections to the sci-fi world.
Thrilled that he's happy to come on our little podcast. So let's just get him in, Jay.
Let's do it. Bob, welcome.
Hello, Jeremy. Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me on the show, guys. I appreciate it.
Your credit list is nuts, and I'm just going to go through some of these titles because no doubt people have seen a lot of what you've done here. You were visual effects supervisor on The Expanse, Altered Carbon, The Tudors, Dolphin Tale 1 and 2. You were involved with Mimic, Johnny Mnemonic, X-Men, even the recent SpongeBob movie. It's amazing.
And a favorite of mine, by the way, is All Is Lost.
Thank you. Yeah, that's actually, I agree. It's a favorite of mine too.
It's a wonderful, wonderful film. So I just wanted to pop that one in. Sorry, Jay.
Oh, absolutely. No problem. So Bob, maybe you can just kind of, first of all, just give us a bit of a sense of what a typical day looks like in the life of a visual effects supervisor.
Well, I can answer that in three ways. There's prep, there's production, and there's post. The day looks very, very different depending on what phase we're in terms of the filmmaking process.
Right, sure.
So, a visual effects supervisor is typically, other than the director and the producers, one of the first people on the show and one of the last people off. People don't think about that because visual effects is typically a post-production process, and that's what they think. We just come in and post. But no, we're in prep. We're there right from typically the script stage because, what you write on the page has a great effect on the budget and what can be done and accomplished in post. So if you don't plan properly, you're going to really lose out at the back end. So I'm typically called in quite early. I'm right now on on two different shows. One, I can't name it yet, but I am in like really, it's just the director, the producer, and me. That's it so far.
Is that right?
We're probably, I'd say 3 to 4 months away from going into production.
So at this point, you're just getting into like the nitty gritties of how you might accomplish this with visual
down
effects.
The script, getting the director's vision straight, knowing what, the director would like to have as a visual effect versus a makeup effect or a special effect.
Right.
How can we keep, visual effects costs down because they are typically, very labor intensive and expensive. And then the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm in post-production on Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.
Wow.
For Netflix. And that's a big film. It's been, shot. It's in the can. It's, the first director's cut is upcoming. And the movie will be released in November of 2025. So we're, deep into post, and it's a huge visual effects show. So in prep, I'm typically in, one-on-one meetings with the director more than anybody. And then after that, the production designer will come on board or the, cinematographer. Those are two key people that I work with very, very closely in prep and in production. And then we move into production, and it's, they're just long days. I'm on set. I'm, sitting next to the director typically at a monitor and, working with the actors if we're doing a lot of, green screen work and they don't know what their eye line is and they don't know what they're supposed to be looking at. And later on, collaborating with the director and cinematographer constantly on set, gathering data. I generally have a team of at least, 1 to 4 people, depending on the scope and size of the project. I'm collecting data, getting photographs, reference photographs, LiDAR scans, a whole bunch of stuff while we're on set. We collect as much data as we possibly can get. All the camera data, the lighting information, everything, because we have to replicate the environment in the computer later on in post. So basically my job is to collaborate on a fairly high creative level and other people do the technical stuff and gather all the data, itemize, store, file away for later use in editorial. Then we get into post-production, and again, it's kind of the director and me, and somewhat with the producer. But then the biggest collaboration with another key creative person is with the editor. So we're working, as a visual effects supervisor, very, very closely.
Right. Yes.
We typically have a visual effects editor on also if it's a big VFX show, because just to maintain all the new versions coming in from VFX vendors, getting them onto the timeline, making sure everything's current, making sure you've got the latest versions, pulling plates so that the vendors have something to work on. Plates are like what we film. That's like it's not you're going into the cupboard and taking some plates out and putting toast on. It's a plate is the footage. So every shot is called I need the plate for shot XC _0010 _001. There's the plate.
Right, yes.
Shot. And any supporting plates, like we did a clean plate, like we had an actor in front of something and we didn't have time to put up a green screen, so we have to shoot what's called a clean plate. So you shoot the actor in the environment and then you take the actor out and do the shot again without the actor. That way you have an empty background to comp in as needed, to either replace the actor or change the background or whatever it happens to be.
Right, sure.
So you got to get all of the, so that's why the VFX editor is very important, because they've got to maintain and manage all of those different, editorial layers before they even get into the artist's hand in a visual effects studio. So that's, kind of the process. It's, prep, a lot of planning. Production, a lot of long hours, and you're thinking on the fly. You're thinking like, a decision you make on set could either save or cost thousands and thousands, about tens of thousands.
Yeah, true.
And then in post, it's actually my favorite part of the process. I mean, I love being on set. I love the collaboration with the crew and the dynamic of being on set and the energy of being on set.
Yes.
But it's nice to get back into my office with my 5K monitor and, color corrected, environment and being on a call like this with the director and the editor and we're reviewing the work, reviewing the shots and, giving notes. And it's a calmer process, put it that way.
Right. Okay. Yes.
For example, on the Dolphin Tale movies, the director Charles Martin Smith, who was an actor, he was in American Graffiti and The Untouchables, and
right.
He's become a director. He does not really enjoy filming. He's not an early morning guy. He does not like. And I'm the same way, to be honest with you. I'm just not an early morning person. So
that's three of us.
Yeah, it's a bit of a struggle to get out of bed at and it's raining and you got to go. And we're shooting outside today. And it's like, but he loves being in post, as do I. So I think that's why Charlie and I got along very, very well. We kind of had the same sentimentality about the whole production process. Kind of in a nutshell, it's really three different workflows. Doing my job.
Yeah, and just as you mentioned, Dolphin Tale there, what's interesting about that movie is that most people probably wouldn't realize that there's any visual effects in that. It's intended to be so seamless.
Thank you very much. That's
what you want, right? That's what you're going for.
It's different when you're talking about sci-fi, where you're creating these worlds that didn't exist, that nobody's seen before. But when it's something where it has to be invisible, that must be a real challenge.
It is, because it's unforgiving.
Yes.
The first movie that I ever worked on that was like that was a movie called Fly Away Home. Yes. It's a story based on Bill Lishman, who's a man in Canada and Ontario, who was teaching Canadian geese to migrate again because they stopped migrating. And he created an ultralight airplane, painted it to look like a goose. His nickname was Father Goose. And he would fly the airplane, from Ontario down to, I think, North Carolina or Maryland or something and birds would follow him. And all the way down. So it was a movie made with Jeff Daniels and Anna Paquin, and that was back in 1995 or 96. And the director was Carol Ballard, and he had directed was it Black Beauty or Black Stallion? I can't remember which one. It's one of the. Put it this way: he's a director who never used visual effects before. He's a purist, right? And his cinematographer, Caleb Deschanel, who happens to be Zooey Deschanel's dad. He's also a purist, never done visual effects before at the time. And Caleb is a cinematographer of, Academy Award nominated, if not winning, cinematographer. And, the production manager or line producer, I should say, on the show, said to Carol and Caleb, there are a number of scenes in this movie that we can't film. Like there's a big scene where in the story, Jeff Daniels and Anna Paquin, they have two ultralights, one each, and they're flying one behind the other, and the geese are in between them, and they fly through the downtown main street of Baltimore, right between all the skyscrapers. So we filmed this in Toronto, and of course we can't film anything. You can't take an ultralight and geese and fly them down, Bay Street, Toronto. So we filmed empty plates of just people at the windows doing, like looking from right to left as the things go by. And that's, working with a whole bunch of extras saying, this is what's going to happen. So, we'll time it out. Literally 1, 2, 3, at every point, you're supposed to be looking somewhere else.
Right. Yeah.
So they did. And because Caleb and Carol were such purists, they were skeptical. And I said, well, look, why don't we do this? Bill Lishman has shot lots of 35 millimeter footage of the geese flying and, from his ultralight, and you pick a shot you want. Just pick a shot of a flock of geese, and we'll add a whole bunch more digital geese to it.
Right.
And then we'll bring you back in and we'll show you, and you pick out the digital geese. So they picked the shot. And thankfully they didn't study it enough that they memorize exactly where, every goose was in the shot. They gave us the plate. We put in digital geese, brought them in. I had it on a big screen for them, and I'm playing it in a loop. And I said, okay, so pick out the digital geese. And Carol walks up and he, points to one on the screen and goes, that one. I go, nope. That one. And I go, nope. Is it that one? I said, nope. He goes, okay. And he sat back down. And then Caleb gets up. He goes, okay, yeah, I know. It's this one. Nope. It's this one. Nope. And he sat down, and then Carol looks over at me. He looks over at me. He goes, okay, you got me.
Success.
So we ended up doing dozens of shots in the movie, way more than we ever thought. Was way more than just that scene.
Yeah, I remember that. There was a lot of talk about that film at the time.
Yeah. So back to your point, Ian, is to making it seamless. It's that's the ultimate goal. And that movie, if you watch it today, from almost 30 years ago, the visual effects still hold up.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Maybe you can talk a bit about this. I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I feel like there's sort of trends in a sense. And I mean, you've been in the industry for a long time. You must be older than you look. Yeah, if you go right back to like Tech War, there's a certain style of effects in those, sort of mid 90s type films. And, over the years, more recently, we're seeing a lot of this virtual production and, kind of trends in that direction. Do you find that there are these sort of phases where as things are evolving, there's new tools that become kind of the tool of the day?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. Before I start that, thank you very much for that nice compliment you just gave. There are kind of phases that I would say are there are creative phases and there are technical phases. There's an annual conference for computer animation, computer graphics. It's called SIGGRAPH.
Right. Yes.
Just graphics. And back in the late 80s, early 90s, all the way up into the early 2000s, every year I'd go to SIGGRAPH, there would be groundbreaking changes in technology,
right.
Absolute groundbreaking changes. And then as the industry matured, the changes from year to year are now less and less and less. So I think, virtual production is probably one of the bigger ones over the last few years. Real-time rendering, Unreal Engine, all that bigger over the last few years. So you do get these, technological, bursts. People kind of latch onto that technology. It's like, what's the new technology today? AI is the next one coming up, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, what's the technology du jour. You do get that kind of thing, but also creatively, it's interesting just thinking about Fly Away Home. Right after Fly Away Home, we did a movie called Dr. Dolittle with Eddie Murphy and a couple of probably 4 or 5 other movies, and they all had birds in them. So we did Fly Away Home with geese, and then the next 4 movies we did it was all birds.
Everyone knew they could do birds now.
No, I was just going to ask you because Stagecraft, the actor in me, it really appeals. You can see the effects as you're acting. So as an actor, I love the idea of the video walls and seeing it all rendered in front of you. From your perspective, is there an advantage to it or not? Or is it actually make it harder for you?
It really depends on the shot, the type of shot, and what you have in the can to put on that wall. For example, let's say that I needed to do a shot and you're walking into a castle across a drawbridge over a moat, and that was already pre-rendered, and it's a locked camera, and you're doing it, and that's great because the drawbridge would be a set piece in the stage. The castle in the background would be the virtual wall.
Yeah.
So the problem, there is kind of the only issue would be the seam between the wall and the floor. You do still see that, no matter how much they try to blend it on set. You do see it. So you need visual effects to clean that up.
Yeah.
But that kind of overall thing works. That's okay. If all of a sudden you wanted to have a shot where you had monsters battling each other, and the director on the day while you're shooting goes, "Oh no, I need that monster to come in about 4 frames later."
Right.
You're going, no, you can't do that. It's already pre-rendered.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Done. So your performance can change.
Yeah.
But the performance of anything on that wall cannot.
I didn't realize
the angle
that.
you're looking at it can, but the performance can't.
Okay.
So that's
really interesting.
Yeah, there are restrictions without a doubt, and anything that you shoot live action, of course, you either have to shoot like a panoramic thing that you're basically doing pan and tilt, pan and scan on the wall behind the actors just to follow them with the real camera, or you have to choreograph a camera, do effectively motion control, and you get a camera on a set somewhere that does something. And then you get that footage and you put the camera back on the floor, and the camera will do the exact same thing again with the actors in front of the wall this time. So there's a lot of planning that goes into it. It's not quite as plug and play as anyone would think.
Is that what John Dykstra kind of invented, the motion camera?
Motion control, yeah.
Yeah, motion control.
Star Wars.
Yeah, that's cool. Actually, can I ask you, because this is what always fascinates me about people, what made you fall in love with the movies? What
made me fall in love with the movies was a film that had absolutely zero visual effects in it whatsoever. And that was a movie called A Soldier Story, directed by Norman Jewison. I was about 18, 19 years, maybe 20 years old when that movie came out. And I was not in the film business. I was actually taking architectural design in a junior college in Florida, which is where I grew up. And I'm sitting in the theater after the movie, and I looked at it and went, I now know what a director does. I realized during the screening of that movie had been made by somebody with a vision. I went like it all just came together with the acting, and obviously there's a person working with the actors and the music and the set design and all that. It just kind of like all of a sudden there was this epiphany, and I was like, and how lucky was I that years later, after I'd been in the film business, I became good friends with Norman Jewison.
Oh wow, that's cool.
He had a school called he has a school. I mean, Norman has passed away, but the school that he started, the Canadian Film Centre, I was asked to join the board of the Canadian Film Centre and became the chairman of the board for quite some time, and was on the board for 28 years. And Norman and I became very dear friends. And it was just like, again, I had absolutely no desire to be in the film business when I saw that movie, and even after that. But I always look back at that moment of going, wow, that was the first movie that really spoke to me. The only reason I'm in the film business is because I fell in love with a woman from Canada. That's why. Really? That's it. I went to I moved from Florida to go to the University of Western Ontario, take fine art, and started dating a young woman at school. We're the same age, but she was a year ahead of me because I had taken a year off between college in Florida and going to Western. I was, planning on moving back to Florida after I graduated, and one day just before graduation, a friend of mine at school came in with this pamphlet and said, "There's this brand new program in computer animation. I'm applying. Are you interested? Because they only take students with 4-year degrees." And I went, "No, I'm not going to do art on computers. What are you kidding? I paint. I'm a photographer. I'm a purist. I don't." And he goes, "Oh, it sounds like a really cool thing." And they get hundreds of applicants, and they only take like 20 people. And it'd be. And I went, "No, I'm not going to do it." And I said, "Just like, where is the school?" He goes, "Oakville, Oakville, Ontario." Now, that's where my girlfriend lives. So that means I get to stay another year. If I apply and get accepted, I get to stay in Canada another year. So I applied and got accepted, and took to it like a duck took to water. I just from day one, it was like, wow.
Isn't that something?
And my wife and I are celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. So
that's amazing.
Congratulations. Yeah. And Ian, you'll be fascinated to know that Western is in our London. Ontario's London.
Yes, our London. Yes, yes. Our London, Ontario. Yes.
A little different than your London.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's beautiful though. And less expensive to live in, I would think.
Well, yeah. I mean, Western is a gorgeous campus, that's for sure. It would be comparable to an Ivy League campus down in the States. It's a gorgeous campus.
So were you born in America or born in Canada?
No, I was born in Canada, moved down to the States when I was very young.
Yeah.
And then decided to go back to Canada just for university.
Yeah.
And stayed. I've been here ever since. I've filmed a lot in the States. I filmed a lot in Mexico. The Tudors in Ireland, the Borgias in Hungary, and I just did a movie a couple of years ago in Serbia for film.
Oh, wow.
So I've been lucky to be able to kind of travel all over.
So you got this taste then for the computer animation. How did it sort of shift into visual effects more specifically?
That's a very good question. So in computer animation, after I graduated from Sheridan College, which is where the computer animation school is, I got a job in kind of like, the marketing person for a software development company, a company called Neo Visuals. They created the software that was used at Sheridan College, the 3D software. So I would just go like on sales junkets and, I'd do demos and, at trade shows and all that kind of stuff. It was a fairly, banal and unsatisfying job, but there wasn't a career in really doing computer animation at the time unless you were working for like huge, big companies. None of them exist anymore, oddly enough, but Cranston Surrey, PDI, Digital Productions, like all of these companies got absorbed or collapsed because they were huge. Like
right.
Computers at that time cost, millions and millions of dollars, and they collapsed under their own weight when smaller, faster computers, cheaper computers came out, and they couldn't change their technology. So
wow.
It was really difficult to actually get into any kind of production whatsoever with a computer animation degree. So I went to work for this software development company. I worked there for a few years, and then got an offer to join a company called Topics in Toronto. And Topics does a lot of, still to this day, does commercials, like using computer animation for commercials. One of the best in the world. At the time, I was the third employee, but they have since gone on to be one of the best, most sought after companies for computer animation for advertising.
Oh wow!
So I got into it like that. Stayed there for a couple of years, and then got recruited by a company called Dome Productions, which was at the time was called the Sky Dome in Toronto. It's now Rogers Centre.
Yes.
And there was a production company there. Dome. It's called Dome Productions, and they did all the the sports televised events and editing and all of that stuff. And they had a full post-production suite. Television productions and film productions started to use them for actual post-production on their shows. And they had a small computer animation department that I got recruited into. And I did things like, I animated, for NBC, I think the 1988 Democratic National Convention opening with all the flags flying by, I used to do that kind of stuff. And one day a group of producers came in, and they were there was a new TV show coming into Toronto called Tech War, and there was a need for a lot of visual effects in Tech War, but there wasn't a company at the time that did long format visual effects.
Oh, okay.
So they were going around to other companies and asking if they could borrow a loan out of their top people. So myself and about 3 or 4 other people got recruited, formed a department right at the production office for Tech War. That was my first time ever in long format visual effects. I'd only ever done commercials before that, or industrials, or flying logos, but I'd never done, neither had anybody else in the department. It was our first foray into it.
And for people who don't necessarily know Tech War, this is a William Shatner driven sci-fi film, right?
Yeah, he co-wrote the books. He was the producer, executive producer, directed a number of episodes, and was one of the stars of the show. Multi-hyphenate. And over the course of doing the 4 initial TV movies, Bill and I became really good friends. And when we finished the film, I came up with an idea one day driving in from Oakville to Toronto along the Gardiner Expressway. And I went, wow, these guys were having trouble finding a company in Toronto that did long format visual effects. There isn't one. Let's make one. So the department formed a company called Core Digital Pictures. Right. And I gave Bill a call and asked him if he wanted to be part of it, if he wanted to become a partner in it. Wow. And I said, we don't want your money because we know we're going to get Tech War, the series, because it had been greenlit. We just like to have you as, we're good friends. I'd like to have you as part of the, and you were, kind of there with us the whole way as we were doing this for the movies. So we went out for a sushi dinner, and at the end of about a 3-hour conversation, he reached across the table, shook my hand, and said, "I'm in." And so
That's
Bill was awesome. The company ran from 94 to 2010. We closed it down in 2010. But Bill and I, to this day, still remain good friends, and that's how I got into the long format of it, the film and TV. And right after we opened up the company, We got Johnny Mnemonic. We were, one of the companies on Johnny Mnemonic. We did Darkman 2 and Darkman 3. We did Tech War. Then we got onto a movie called Cube with Vincenzo Natali.
Yes, I remember it.
We did about the same time another TV series called Lex: The Dark Zone Stories, which is a very cheesy sci-fi show. And on purpose, like it was designed to be that way.
Yeah.
Sure.
And in case the Donovan brothers are listening to this, the guys who created it, it was designed to be. And then right there, shortly thereafter, I got a call from a producer saying, "I've got this Mexican director doing his first North American film, and we're looking for Toronto companies to do the visual effects. Can we come in for a visit?" And that was Guillermo del Toro and his
right. And you're still working together.
And we're still working together. I think this is our 6th movie together.
Isn't that incredible? Ian, what was your question you asked me recently about Keanu Reeves?
Is he your greatest movie star ever? Is Canada's greatest? I love him. I absolutely love him.
Or is it William Shatner?
There are arguments to be made for both.
Yeah. Jeremy came back with the two Ryans. He came back with Ryan Gosling, Ryan Reynolds. But to me, I think Keanu must be. He's got to be up there at least.
Put it this way, he's done some amazing, iconic things, and he's actually a genuinely nice guy.
It must have been really exciting in the 90s there to be a part of, such a new kind of movement, like so many new developments and technologies. So often I hear this kind of story of pieces of software being built for specific projects that then become a part of the kind of VFX ecosystem. How much of that problem-solving skill is required to do what you do?
Put it this way, if I stopped to think about it while we're doing it, we'd probably stop doing it because it's it is intense. A lot of money is being spent to do what we do. And the crazy thing is that, on a movie budget, if you take a look at the construction portion of a movie budget,
yes,
everything is broken down. Every job is broken down. So the construction budget might be $5 million.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you see, materials and labor and, every job itemized. Visual effects, you get one line, $12 million. Why is that one line $12 million? But it's because that's exactly what we're doing. We are inventing. It is labor intensive. We are, R&D. It's like there's so much that goes into it because nobody wants their movie to look like it's using technology from 5 years ago. They want the movie to look like it's using technology from 5 years from now. It's a challenge. And, a movie I did for, I was a supervising producer on for Disney called The Wild at my company, the company I had with Shatner. I mean, it was an $80 million movie. We had a full R&D department in-house. As a matter of fact, there's a piece of software that almost everybody in visual effects and animation uses for production management. It's called ShotGrid. It's actually now been renamed Flow. Originally it was called Shotgun, and it was developed at my company.
Oh, wow.
And it's used everywhere in the business. So, but the coolest thing was that we were using software called Houdini that was not really well known for its character capabilities.
Right.
This is a movie with all animals that escaped from the zoo. One of my partners at Core, John Mariella, was a Houdini expert, and he's an animation genius. And he was very adamant that he wanted to use Houdini. And people coming in and going, no, you got to use Maya for the show. No, I don't want to use Maya. I want to use Houdini. And the people at Side Effects Software who create Houdini, they're in Toronto, they put 5 developers in our company for the duration of the production of that film, which was 3 years. So we had five people developing whatever we needed and publishing new versions overnight.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would really push the technology forward, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and it was extremely stressful.
I bet.
Extremely stressful because you got Disney basically breathing down your neck going, what's what's going on? Like, why aren't I seeing more shots? Or how come this is costing so much? Or what's it taking so long? It's like every day it was a report to Disney, every single day.
Wow.
And we had Disney producers on site the whole time, basically, overseeing things.
Let's talk about The Expanse a little bit, if that's all right.
Sure. Can I ask a really nerdy question? Now we're on Expanse. Can I ask a really super nerdy question? Okay, just to give it context.
I like it already.
Yeah, just to give it some context. Gravity, 2013. Great movie, and I'm watching it, I'm loving it. And finally, Sandra Bullock takes the astronaut's skull cap off. And I'm like, how are they going to do this? And they'd cut her hair off, which is probably accurate to what an astronaut would do in space. You don't want a woman's hair in zero gravity. but I felt it was a little bit of a cheat. 2015, Expanse comes out, and it's literally the opening. I think it's the pilot. We've got the woman, she's got a Sandra Bullock-like hair, and she's in zero gravity, and you're letting it flow in zero grav. Do you remember the shot I'm talking about? Because it's an amazing shot. It's an amazing shot. So I wanted to know, is that, as a layman, I look at that shot and I go, that's incredible. Was that an easy shot, or am I right that that was incredible? Or was it easier than I think it might have been?
No, it was very challenging. And so I can, the character's Julie Mao.
Yeah.
And she was played by Florence Fave. So I had the hair department completely put Florence's hair under a net.
Right.
With tracking markers on it. So her real hair was completely contained. The aforementioned former partner of mine at Core Digital Pictures, John Mariella, who I said was an incredible animator, used Houdini, the software that I mentioned before, to animate that hair. He actually developed the technology himself.
Wow.
It was all CG hair the whole time.
Layman here. I was wondering if you took her underwater.
Nope.
No.
Full all CG hair.
And I have to tell you, Ian's been very excited to ask you about this.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, sorry, I'm just such a nerd. But I'd also like to know, without obviously in any way or shape or form insulting gravity, when you look at Sandra Bullock's hair cut off, do you think they did that to prevent having to do what you've done with animating hair?
Yes. Yeah,
yes.
For that, it was a fairly contained scene. It was we wanted that wow factor right from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So we never really did that again in the show.
No.
But with Gravity, they had to, she was in the whole movie, so they made that creative decision to not have to deal with zero-G hair. I get it. It's very expensive.
Yeah, they crushed it. You crushed it. Absolutely crushed it.
Thank you.
Because they're amazing opening. I know it sounds really, really nerdy, but I love the credits, the opening sequences on Expanse. You're straight away in there with these incredible credits, and then this scene. And as I say, I'm just a layman who's just a sci-fi nerd, but it blew me away instantly. I've been reminded because Amazon Prime literally said to me, Expanse is expiring in the next 30 days. I was like, hold on, it's a Prime thing. And then I remembered that it was originally Sci-Fi Channel, and then it was cancelled, and then there was this big furore, because I follow Will Wheaton, the Star Trek actor, who's also a big Expanse fan, and he was like, bring back the Expanse, bring back the Expanse. And then Prime picked it up again. Can you talk to that period of what happened there, or not? And if you can't, it's fine.
Yeah, I think it's fairly public domain knowledge. Sci-Fi decided after 3 seasons it was too expensive, and they decided to cancel it. And then there was a huge fan groundswell movement. They lobbied like crazy, and the super fans. I'm friends with all the super fans. They know me very well. I know them because I really appreciate them. And I got them, set visits, and they got to meet all the actors, like all the. There were probably a good dozen who I would call ultra super fans, and they again know the actors, and they know the actors know them, and they put together this movement to get the Expanse renewed. And they I get an email and going, we're planning on strapping a model of the Rocinante to a weather balloon and taking it right to space because the weather. We do that for publicity. I said sure, and they did it.
Wow. They really wanted it.
We're gonna hire a plane to fly around Amazon's headquarters in Santa Monica and save the Expanse and fly around for 4 hours. Is that a good idea? I said sure. And I had to actually be at Amazon one day for a meeting. I walked out and there's that plane flying around. I went,
that's awesome.
Like seriously, you did it.
That's pretty wild.
And there was a lobbying group. The actors all lobbied for it. It really became, like I said, fan driven, cast driven. Jim Murray, the props master, was extremely involved in trying to get it renewed. And Bezos, he always wanted it from the beginning, but they never came to terms with Alcon, the production company. And then I guess he just finally went, it's the Expanse has been saved. So they put it on for 3 years and then bought the previous 3 seasons.
Yeah. How long was it before you went, yes, we're back?
Well, unfortunately, it was long enough that I took on Altered Carbon. So
Gotcha.
It was a few months, yeah. So even though I was a producer of season 4, I never actually set foot on set.
Okay.
Because I was in British Columbia shooting Altered Carbon.
Right, yeah. What sort of a volume of VFX were you dealing with on that series?
Well, depending on the episode, it could be anywhere from about 100 shots to 400 shots an episode.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. We're talking like, film level here.
Yeah.
I mean,
it feels huge.
It feels huge. That's what I was just going to say.
It feels absolutely huge. And I don't think I'd seen that in TV before The Expanse, genuinely. But the reboot of Battlestar Galactica was really cool, but it didn't feel big. They kept it, relatively contained. Obviously, the new Disney Star Wars series like Andor and what have you, that come post The Expanse feel big, but that's Star Wars. You understand they've got that sort of budget. Was there a massive following for the books? Was it that IP in the books that made them go, yeah, we can spend this comfortably?
It certainly was. Yeah. But going back to the the look of The Expanse, just to quote Homer Simpson, I don't know where I am, but it looks expensive.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Where did you shoot it? Yeah, because they must have been big stages.
Yeah, big stages in Toronto. As a matter of fact, one of the stages was actually called Jumbo. Like it was.
Okay. Yeah.
For season 1, the big set piece was the street in series.
Yeah.
Where Miller lived. But that only went up one floor. Like everything above it and beyond it was all CG. Like so set extensions. There were many other corridors that cut out of rock. Inside series where maybe the corridor itself that was built was 30, 40 feet long, and there's a blue screen at the end.
Yeah.
And then some of the environments were completely computer generated. Not like nothing more than just a full blue screen environment with maybe a catwalk, like the escape from the Donager when the Rocinante was still called the Tachi in episode 4 of season 1. That we had basically a wall and a catwalk that went out about 30 feet, and that was it.
Okay,
that was all.
Is there a moment that you are most pleased with in that series?
Yeah. It's the one that would make me cry pretty much every night when I watched it. Because in post I have my home office and it was solemn to film because it was an important moment between two important characters. It's when Miller finds Julie Mao in the blue room. So Florence Fave and Tom Jane. One of those things that again there was nothing on the set other than blue screen and a blue chair for Florence to lie in. But the moment between Julie and Miller was extremely emotional. And my wife, every night after dinner, would walk in, and I'm, on my screen, and I'm like looking at the latest version of the effects cut in with the sound and the dialogue and all that. And there'd be a little tear coming down my cheek. She handed me my tea, and she said, "Oh, are you watching episode 205 again?" I said, "Yeah, I am. I'm watching 205 again." And that's where Miller meets Julie. And again, I was there when it was filmed, and you don't feel, it was poignant and solemn, but you don't feel the emotion then. Although it was a fun little anecdote is in the scene, Miller takes his helmet off in a zero oxygen environment. He takes his helmet off, and it's like 3:00 in the morning when we're filming this, and I hear over the radio, "Somebody find Bob Munroe. Tom wants him on set." Okay, so I go to I was in the producer's tent, and I go onto set, and he goes, "When I take this off, what am I feeling? What is it?" And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not the director, but intoxicated. He goes, "That's it, thank you." And that was like how he reacted, was the way he absorbed it, and it just when it all came together.
Yeah,
it would literally make me cry.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
His ability, because his character is really fascinating to me. His ability to care about this person that he doesn't know. Yes. I just think it's a beautiful performance all the way through, because he appears to care about nothing except this woman. And it was a very special performance with a very cool hairdo. If I could get away with this hairdo, I'd do it, honestly. Seriously cool.
So what sci-fi films have influenced you? Well,
and to a certain degree, probably most of them. I'm always finding something new in pretty much any sci-fi film I watch. Certainly 2001 was something that I hardly anyone had ever seen before. That kind of thing. In terms of overall scope and epicness, Star Wars for sure. Like the original 1977 Star Wars movie. That's still Star Wars #1 for me because I was 16 years old when it came out, and it had a big influence on me.
Look at Ian's face right now. He is just, you got him so excited when you said Star Wars.
Yeah, I just love it. I love it.
Put it this way: there hasn't been a sci-fi film, let's say, with a budget of more than $15-20 million in the last 10 years that I've looked at that I haven't appreciated and learned from.
Interesting. Wow.
So I it's hard to pick a favorite over the last couple of decades.
Sure.
Do you have a preference for the style or the subgenre of sci-fi? So, for instance, Altered Carbon and The Expanse are two very different types of sci-fi, or hard-fi versus fantasy almost.
Right.
Do you have a preference for any of the subgenres? Do you like dystopian or grounded or space operas like Star Wars? Is there anything that is a favorite?
I would say that after having worked on a number of different subgenres like that, and of course seeing them all, the hard sci-fi is still my favorite.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get onto a set and shoot something, and the science is not even considered. And I just went, even on The Expanse, we weren't perfect, but we tried really hard to make it as close to plausible as possible.
Well, it's gotten a lot of accolades from scientists community, hasn't it? The Expanse, it always has had. I've heard physics professors and what have you reference The Expanse, and as being as good as they've seen.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that stand out for me. There was a panel that we did after the first year. We did the panel at Caltech, and one of the people on the panel, Jessie Christensen, she's a astrophysicist, I believe, and her husband's an astronomer. And they said when they saw the flip and burn in the first episode, they both jumped off the couch and cheered.
Really? Yeah. That's so cool.
That's the way you turn a spacecraft around. You don't bank it like an X-wing fighter, because there's no resistance in space. Yeah. So you basically flip and burn. So that was an important a moment, and that was season 1. And then this past August, I was invited to JPL, Jet Propulsion Labs in California, to be on a panel for nothing but scientists. There were 300 people in this auditorium, with me, Glenton Richards, one of the writers, Kara G, who plays drummer, Nadine Nicole, who plays Clarissa Mao, and Chad Coleman, who plays Fred Johnson. Chad's a really good friend of mine. And so we were all on this panel. I'm sitting there in front of 300.
Yeah, how cool is that?
And they were like eating it up. They were eating it. And a great little story from that. One of the only times that we got called out on something for not being accurate was in episode 2 of season 1, where Amos and Holden are out on the surface of, I can't remember the name of the ship now. It was called the Kettle. It was the little shuttle that they took from the Canterbury to go find the set where the sound was coming from, the distress call was coming from.
Yeah.
They're trying to fix an antenna, and they've got this huge wrench, this like an airline kind of mechanic wrench. There's a moment where it slips and it goes flying away. And I said to the director, I said, no, it wouldn't do that. Like he would, like, if you let it go, it would just stay there. It would just hover there. Like, they're moving, 17,000 miles an hour, but they're moving 17,000 miles an hour together. It's not like the wrench goes flying away. Yeah. There's no space wind. There's no resistance. So we got called out on that. And I don't blame them, because it was completely wrong. It was the physics, completely wrong. But anyway, I still, that wrench I had for, like, after we wrapped, I kept the wrench because we needed to scan that wrench so that we could do the digital version of it flying away into space, magically flying away into space. Anyway, so I'm at the panel at JPL, and I was asked, like, what is, I was literally asked a question, like, what is the most, the thing that you wish you could have done over on The Expanse? And I mentioned that scene and that shot. Yeah. And everybody's like laughing because they know it. They've heard me say it before. They and they're all big fans. They know they probably cringed when they saw it. And then I said, and I got one other thing. And I reached down into my bag and I pulled out the wrench and I donated it to JPL.
Oh,
so
that's
they
awesome.
now have it. So
that's awesome.
That's good. Yeah.
See, for the rest of us who aren't very smart, the spinning away of the wrench adds jeopardy. There's no jeopardy if he just stays there.
But from a storytelling standpoint, what could have been really, really cool, in my opinion, is if it did stay with them, but just out of reach.
That would be cool.
It's right there. But you can't get it.
Yeah.
So it's 2 inches away. It might as well be 10,000 miles away. Because you just can't reach it.
That's a really good point.
So that would have been. That would have been fine. That would have been plausible, and that would have been even better, in my opinion, because, like, no matter what they're doing, they can't get it.
Yeah,
and it's just out of reach.
I like that.
It is really fascinating how people, these super fans, and that are watching things at a whole other level. They just want to pick apart the details, understand everything, have their theories. I'm seeing it right now, with Severance, for example, and all the little details. People are, they take shots and they realign them and look at the planning and look at, what I mean? Like, as a filmmaker, you really have to pay attention to these details because people are going to look at them, you know?
Absolutely. And I love that show, by the way. I love that show.
Isn't it great?
It's so terrific.
Especially science fiction, it feels. Science fiction is the one where the fan communities are that rabid that they will come after you.
But what you're talking about, Bob, I feel like is going beyond maybe your job description. You're entering into having to understand whatever it is.
Yeah, having to understand physics.
Physics, astrophysics.
Yeah. Astrophysics,
yeah. So what sort of research were you doing to get that kind of information?
Well, you can't see my bookshelf over here, but I can read some of the, let's see here. James White's Chaos, Dictionary of Science, How to Calculate Quickly, Mind for Numbers, all these science and math and all. I got like loads. I constantly during the Expanse, I had my daughter was my VFX producer, an extremely talented VFX producer. And anytime anybody would come to my office for a meeting, she was there, and she'd see them looking behind my desk at all these books.
Right.
He goes, yeah, he actually reads them. So.
Wow.
Isn't that wild,
I mean, you're clearly a very smart man. I mean, maths and physics to me is so alien. Were you good at that stuff at school?
I guess so, because I didn't try. I didn't really care for it, but I didn't have to try either. I didn't really have to study. So I guess maybe it comes by, I come naturally by it.
Yeah.
If I had my druthers, I would have spent a little bit more time thinking about it or studying it just to be more well-rounded. But art at the time in high school was my thing. Like I graduated with a pretty good grade point average and all that. But I just never really cared about it until the Expanse came along.
It's rare though to have somebody who has both sides, has that, what I call the academic and the art brain. They've got both up there. That's really rare, because I have the art, but I don't have the academics at all. So really jealous of you, Bob. You're a lucky man.
I do feel like that's one of the great things about, being a filmmaker is you get exposed to these subjects and worlds that you otherwise might not have experienced, It really does, expose you to whole new things.
I was saying to Joe in an episode we did a couple of weeks ago that I never understood Einstein's theories of relativity, and I still don't think I do, but I understand them far more having watched Interstellar than through 5 years of schooling, because I was watching Interstellar and loving Interstellar, and now I'm starting to understand relativity a little bit. And it just shows you that if you can present the information in an appealing way, even a moron like me can take on pretty complex scientific principles and theoretical principles. By
the way, Ian's not a moron at all.
I wouldn't say that. I've read one of his scripts. I don't think he's a moron in the least.
Oh, bless you. But I'm researching as I'm writing. So when I'm writing, because I wish I could write a Star Wars story, but I can't. I just don't have that in me. I'm lent more to cynicism. So the hard fi is more my area, where like hard themes that you have to deal with. But as I'm writing, it's very important to me that if you're going to deal with tough themes, you've got to get the science right. I'm literally, as I'm writing Adiona or the Elpis or Utopia, I'm going, is that actually possible? And I'm spending longer researching the science, even if it's only theoretical, than I do actually writing it, just to make sure that it's accurate. Yeah. I don't want to be that guy that says, like a one line in a script, the ship travels twice the speed of light.
Right.
And have somebody come up and go, yeah, that's not possible. Yeah. I don't want to be in that. I don't want to be that guy,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really, I guess, depends on the parameters that you have defined for your world, the world in which your story is operating. If people, if you establish it that people can, blink their eyes and disappear, and then they open their eyes and they reappear, then that's the reality for that world.
Yeah.
As long as you stay true to that and don't change the rules halfway through and go, now all of a sudden I, don't disappear when I blink, or something else happens when I blink now, but that's okay, because it's fantasy and we can do anything we want. No. If you still have to establish a set of rules.
Yeah.
In the Expanse, our set of rules was hard sci-fi, so that's what we tried to adhere to. We didn't want to, obviously there was a fantastical element with the protomolecule and Miller later on.
Yeah.
But that's kind of within the world, because Miller is eternal to Holden, so that's his own little set of defined rules. Yeah. So as long as you stay true to your own rules, then you'll be successful, in my opinion. So the Expanse, we said hard sci-fi. That's it.
It's really cool because Jeremy and I are big fans of Ridley Scott's Alien, the first Alien film. And I think part of what drew me into that movie when I first saw it all those years ago was, yes, the xenomorph is crazy. It's out there. It's an incredible imagination. But everything else about that ship and that crew, there's nothing else flashy. There's no other flashy sci-fi in it other than the monster. So it feels grounded in a strange way.
Yeah.
Because, before we meet the alien, the crew are arguing about union rates. Yaphet Kotter's character's going to try to get more money because he's doing overtime fixing this or that. It all feels very grounded until the alien appears. And that makes it more terrifying, I think. That these people feel like you'd know them. They're normal people.
Yeah.
But you're right. Just adding that little bit of extra really does make the best sci-fi, I think.
Yeah.
Makes it really cool.
All right, so Bob, you've been doing a lot of producing lately. What's ahead for you?
I would say probably more producing. I'm in the middle right now of kind of launching with a couple of other partners a development company. I still love visual effects, obviously, and I love directing. And on the Expanse, I was second unit director. On the Tudors, I was second unit director, and most other things that I've worked on in the last 20 years, I was a second unit director on. I do like directing. Love working with actors. On the Tudors, I worked with every single one of the actors. We would get behind on schedule, and all of a sudden, the producer Morgan O'Sullivan would come to me and go, can you shoot this scene tomorrow? And it's a scene with principal actors, so dialogue, everything. I love that component, but I also do like producing. I like that problem solving. Kind of the general manager of a football team kind of. Yeah. Producing is more in my more future, and I'm not gonna lie. I'm getting older. I've been in the business for 40 years, and 14-hour days are okay every now and then. I mean to be on a production every once a year or once every 2 years, 14-hour days, that's fine, happy to do that. But but as a producer, you don't necessarily have to do that unless you're the line producer and you're on set every moment. I love the development process. Yeah. And as a VFX supervisor, you don't really get involved in the development process, but as a producer, you do it. I quite enjoy that. I think that's where my immediate sights are set.
It makes sense as well because you've got all this wealth of experience. So to almost be like the Oracle is what well, you're not having to do the 14-hour days. You don't have to do the stuff that me and Jay have to do. But you're the Oracle. You're and you're the person people can go to, and you've seen it all. You've done it all. So it actually suits your experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I could tell you that there is no spoon.
There is no
spoon.
Okay. It's brilliant. Oh, can I ask you one last question? It's not sci-fi, so the podcast listeners will have to put up.
Well, then no.
No, come on. Come on. One more question that's not sci-fi.
All right, sneak it in.
All is lost.
Yes.
I mentioned it at the top. I've Googled this and I haven't got an answer. The ending, when the hand goes into the water and pulls him out, I've taken it as a spiritual hand taking him to the next life. Am I right or not?
You're neither right nor wrong.
Okay.
It's
intentionally ambiguous.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, it is. Yep.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Nobody knows the answer.
Okay. What is it? Do you mind telling me what you think your answer is to you for that film?
My answer is really. You want me to? I think he got saved.
Do you really? So the opposite to me. The opposite to me. Yeah.
Because I was on set. And I know there was a guy on the boat reaching down into the water. So
Wait a minute.
Yeah. Ask a silly question, Ian. Yeah. Good. I love it.
Most of that movie was actually filmed on a green screen stage.
Really?
Like 75-80% of that movie. All the storms, all that stuff was on a green screen stage. Or a infinity tank in Rosarito, Mexico. Where James Cameron he had that studio built for Titanic.
Okay.
And we were in the same tank. Even with that, the water at the edge of the tank, even though it's Pacific Ocean out beyond it, the water changes as it gets to the edge. It flattens out, it smooths out. So you see a difference in texture of the water. So we had to, even those shots that were supposed to be all in camera, we had to use visual effects to clean all that up to basically blend everything together. And then remove tanker ships in the background that were because Pemex, the Mexican oil company, was 20 miles away, and you'd see tankers going through the background all the time.
Right, yeah.
Those too.
Yeah, that's that actually reminds me that's like Spielberg talking about Jaws. You know, they're out on the ocean and you get a sailboat going past the Orca, and it's like, we're trying to show this guy's in the middle of the sea.
Exactly.
You'd have to wait. He'd wait until it went out of shot. You know, how long was that shoot? Was that a long shoot? All
4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you there on set for all of that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know this is a real fanboy thing to ask, but I've always admired him greatly. Can I ask what Robert Redford's like to work with?
He's a very nice man to work with. Very
Yeah.
nice to work with. Yeah.
Does it just come naturally to him that, because I couldn't believe he didn't get the Oscar, I'll be honest. I think it's an incredible performance. A one-man film. You don't even know the character's name. He's just man, isn't he?
Man. Yep, he's man, yeah.
He's just man. I'm sure Mr. Redford won't listen to this, but if he did, he wouldn't mind me saying he wasn't a young man either when he's doing this movie. He just blows my mind as an actor, I guess. Was there a lot of direction there? Does Redford is he that good?
It's a bit of column A, bit of column B. But he is that good, yes. And he's got one word of dialogue in the whole movie.
Yeah.
He was incredible. He was he was absolutely incredible to work with. And like I said, a very nice man, very reserved, actually.
Yeah.
Boy, did he, was he a trooper? I mean, he had to get wet a lot. He had to stay in the water a lot. He had to, deal with all of that at his age. Yeah, he did. It was an incredible performance because it had to be nuanced. It couldn't be panicked. So you've got to basically bring, a lot of character out with minimal action, minimal words, and he did it. He
crushed it.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
people who I've talked to about that film that aren't actors, they say, oh well, it must have been easy to learn the lines. Like that, it's the opposite. If you have dialogue, that's what you grab onto as an actor first of all, is the dialogue. So learning the lines isn't a problem. It actually helps you with characterization. I can't imagine doing what Redford did on that movie with such little to work with, and I just think it's a phenomenal performance and a phenomenal film. But I'm glad he was saved.
In my mind, he was saved.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we could easily make this an 8-hour installment.
I know. Yeah. I'm sorry, Bob.
I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being here, Bob. We really appreciate it.
Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, buddy.
It's very much my pleasure. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys again.
Oh,
awesome.
God bless you.
All right, Ian, it's been a pleasure. We'll talk to you real soon.
Absolutely. Take care.
Popcorn in Orbit is produced by the Shooting Eye and Ice River Pictures.